Welcome to tonight's presentation. The purpose of this presentation is to share how feeding supplier agreement is done. It does not replace any of the existing courses. My name is Yiwei Chan. I've been a volunteer with the Red Cross for 16 years. And during steady state, that's when I'm not responding to disasters. I'm the Pacific Division Training Event Planner, and I'm also the Pacific Division's feeding co-lead. And during operational state, I usually deploy as the Mass Care Chief or HQ Sheltering Manager for national level operations. And currently, I'm supporting DR 672 for wildfire readiness and capacity building. Several housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted tonight on our Pacific Division Red Cross YouTube channel. The link will be posted in the chat. It is the same link as last week. Please enter your full name in the chat so your hours can be tracked. I'll enter them on volunteer connections for you. Your camera has been disabled. I've reserved 1.5 hours for this presentation, so feel free to come off mic if you have any present questions while I do the live demo, as I won't be able to see the chat. If not, and that you can wait, please enter your question in the Q&A. The chat scrolls too fast, and I won't be able to catch the questions. I will pause in between each section if time allows. If not, I will address the questions at the end of the presentation. This session is material dense. We have a lot to cover. If you need anything to be repeated, please let me know. I ask you to mute your mic when you're not speaking. And if we have too many background noises, I will be disabling the mic. So let's get into it. Let's go over the agenda real quick for today. I've shared the overview of the ops order last week, and I want to briefly touch base again for this week as well. And we'll do the live demo on the Red Cross Disaster Feeding Supplier Agreement. And I'll go ahead and cover the request for quotations, the non-binding feeding letter, the purchase order guide, how do we order meals, the meal order form, the buying matrix, how are we going to pay things for how much money that we're going to use what method, and the 6409 form for resource requisition, then when we're going to open a purchase order. For the next steps, we're going to talk about the courses that you need and what specialty tracks that we have available for feeding. And we'll also open the floor to Q&A at the end. So the ops order, we currently have the 008-25 Pacific ops order that's effective from June to November 2025 of this year. And the reason we have that is the prediction that we have above normal fire weather. And Southern California is projected to have significant fire potentials for the remainder of the few months that we have. Shelter resident transition, that's SRT, is approved per the standard program. In Los Angeles, we have the DR number of 672. So the assumptions that we have for this ops order that will be in the continuous response mode to provide mass care services. And we will have multiple level 7s, 5, 4, and 3, and we'll go into depth later on for the budgeting piece. And because we're also competing with other divisions with human resources and material resources, that's why we're establishing this order. The intent for this order is that we can have the capacity and capability to effectively and efficiently initiate and deliver the near continuous mass care across the whole entire division till November the 15th. And those can be extended that, there's no prediction of when fire weather will be ending. Let's look at the map real quick for what Pacific Division covers. We have a wide territory of the Pacific Division. So everything in the rosy pink, those are the Pacific Division. We have 10 regions total. The ones that I want to focus on this time is the financial levels. We touched about this last time. And this time I wanted to pay attention to the dollar amounts, especially the $50,000 for the level 2 for regional operation, and also for the divisional operation that is up to $250,000. The 2.5 million tops for national and the $10 million plus for level 7 operations. I want to pause here real quick. Before we go to the live demonstration. Do we have any questions so far? Okay, hearing none.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my invite doesn't give me access to the actual Teams. Is this being recorded and will you be sharing so that I can see the actual deck after?
Yes, the meeting is being recorded and the link will be shared as well. If you're not able to see the slides, try to log in and out of the Teams meeting to see if you're able to see it. Sometimes that'll fix the glitch. Okay, and let's go to the live sharing. Allow me a few seconds. I'm going to share my screen instead of my window, and I think that works a little better. Give me 1 second. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? Yes, you can. Okay, because I see my screen. So again, for the purpose of this, I've already pre-opened all the tabs that I want to use. But for if you're just accessing this, you will go to volunteer connection first using your regular login credentials. Then on the right, you'll click OneSource. Then on the very, very top, the search bar, you're going to type the feeding toolkit and this page will pop up. On the very top, I recommend everyone to watch this. It's about an hour and a half long. It's the seasonal feeding and a webinar, a DES webinar that's distribution of emergency supplies. So I recommend you to watch that. It also covers some of the stuff that we're seeing today for the purchase order. So when I'm going to go here, it's when in doubt that you don't know where to find stuff, you can type the search box. So this one, when I go to Toolkit, I will see the feeding supplier agreement packet, and that's what I want. So let's go to this. That's what you'll see when you click into the link. And what you would want is you would want to download this so you can edit this form. Let's go through this and let me minimize my screen first. Okay, perfect. So this is the feeding supplier agreement. This is a whole packet. It has about 11 or 12 pages. The whole packet is needed for you to submit, and we'll go through details of what is included in here. So you have the disaster feeding request for quotation here. You have the supplier letter, the non-binding letter. That's not an agreement or contract. We also have the purchase order guide, and you also have the sample meal order form. The attachment that we want to pay attention here is you want to attach W-9s. So when you go out to the feeding vendors and ask them to sign this form, one thing that you want to make sure is they're attaching W-9s to this form. They'll send it back to you. You wanted to make sure that W-9 is legible, that you can actually read it. It's preferred that they type and send you an email copy instead of a handwritten and a faxed or printed copy or copied. That is difficult to read. Another thing that you want to make sure for the W-9 is you want to make sure whatever is listed on the W-9 matches the name and the description of the form that we're going to go over later on. They will also need to send us the proof of applicable state health department certificate and licenses. Without those two, the vendors won't be able to get paid. So that's one thing that we really wanted to make sure that we attach in this packet. I want to pause here before we go to the next one. Do we have any pressing questions that you want to come off mute for? Okay, hearing none. Next, we're going to go through the disaster feeding request for quotation. This needs to be done before we start ordering food from them. It can be done by steady state when we don't have a disaster operation, or it can be done when we have a huge disaster operation, when we have the Los Angeles wildfires, that if we have a new vendor, it can be done at the time of the disaster before we start ordering from them. So let's go through them step by step. Date, I'm going to say today's date. Quote provided by. So this will be whomever is providing the quote. What I usually like to do is I like to type the vendor's name and also the person providing it. So I'm going to make it up. ABC Cafe is providing it, and Jane Doe is the owner, and they provided the quote to me. To the American Red Cross, the quotation, I'm going to say that is going to be effective starting tomorrow and is issued by the ABC Cafe. And it's valid through, I'm going to say, till the end of this operation order, which is November 15th of 2025. Supplier's company name. So this will be ABC Cafe. One thing, again, that we want to focus here is that you want to make sure this one matches their W-9. For example, that let's say the owner is actually Jane Doe. This is just her company says Jane Doe, but they're doing business as ABC Cafe. So you would say Jane Doe, DBA, ABC Cafe. This is important that they match because if they don't match, their invoice won't be able to get paid. The invoice will get bounced. So street address, 1234, street, avenue. The city will, let's just say Los Angeles. The state is California. The zip code is 12345. Phone number 456-7890. Federal tax ID, again, this can be found on their W-9 form. Usually the vendor won't be remembering that number on top of their mind. So it's recommended that before you approach them, that you'll let them know that this will be the information that we need so they can get prepared ahead of time. Let's say this is 22222. If they do have a website, you can put it down. If they don't, that's totally fine as well. This part is also important, the supplier's representative contact information. So depending on the scale and the capacity of the restaurant, maybe you're talking to the owner directly from mom and pop's shop, or that you might be talking to the sales director or the outreach director, or you're talking about, the nonprofit department that you're reaching out to them directly. So I am going to say this is Jane Doe again. And I usually like to put down what their title is, so then we know whom we're contacting and who is the representative providing that contact information. And another thing that you want to make sure is they have the authority, whether it's the financial authority, to provide the quote. Not as in a cashier is giving you saying that, oh yes, we can give you a discount. We can do $10 a meal instead of $20 without the owner's approval or without the formal process, because then when we go to place the actual order, we won't get the $10 meal, we'll be getting the $20 meal. Another recommendation is I would like to see two names on there. That's just my personal preferences. It's not required on here. In case that I'm not able to reach Jane Doe, so that I want a John Smith to be here, we can say this is also the co-owner. So then we can make sure that we can reach them. The email address, their phone number. One thing I want to make sure that the difference between the phone number and mobile number is the phone number will be their landline if they have one. The mobile number is the one that they will actually pick up. It's always good to make sure and to differentiate which one they're providing. Sometimes they might be providing a work number, but it won't go through. Sometimes they might be giving a Google Voice number that can only accept text. So we want to double check to confirm that we can actually contact them. And again, that we all know that disaster can happen any time of the day. So the important piece is we need to be able to contact them. And let's say this is going to be 7890. Authorized supplier signature, they can sign this once the whole packet is being prepared. The Red Cross representative contact information, that will be the person, whomever is talking to the suppliers at that specific time. That person does not need to be a HQ mass care chief or HQ mass care manager or HQ feeding manager. It can be anyone on the team that is making the initial request. So I'm gonna put my name on it. And I'm going to say I am the mass care. I'm going to type this way because I cannot type anymore. I'm the mass care generous manager. I will go ahead and put my email here. I will put my phone number here. And I will also put my phone number here. This is a mobile number, so I will put that here. Oops. Okay. I want to pause here before I go to the next page. Do we have any pressing questions that you want to come off mute for? Okay, hearing none, going to the next. Feeding request details. This is the financial part that we're going to talk about. The pricing per meal, how much they're going to tell us for breakfast. I'm going to make the numbers up. 10 for breakfast, 15 for lunch, 20 for dinner, and $5 for snack. And I'm going to say the delivery charge is going to be $30 per trip. So one question we often get is, do we have a standard amount of our budget? Does your breakfast have to be $10 and $15 for lunch and $20 for dinner? No, we do not have a set budget. So where do you come up with that budget? So if you're the HQ mass care team or the HQ chief, I don't even know how to talk anymore. If you're the mass care chief or if you're the HQ feeding manager, you will know your budget because usually when they do the service delivery plan, the job directors doing that, they oftentimes will come and ask for opinion as, for this area, how much do you think that we can pay for all those vendors? So sometimes, when you have a high cost area, the lunch maybe minimum, maybe it's $20 instead of $15. And it may be that, when you order book, maybe they'll say it's $10 instead of $15. So again, when in doubt, you're going to reach out to your supervisors, whether it's the mass care chief, whether it's the HQ feeding manager, to understand what is our budget around that specific operation. Let's go to the product requirement. This is important for us. I know I've said important things for multiple times, and this indeed, feeding is really important to our clients. So the product requirement that they need to be consisting of at least of the ones that we listed on there. Oftentimes I see that people, when they start an operation, the vendors, they'll have the standard. And when we start winding down, maybe they're only giving a toast for lunch. And again, that's not the standard. They should be giving us the 8 ounces of entree, 6 ounces of vegetables, fruits, etc. So this is something that we want to communicate with them ahead of time so they know what our expectations are. Okay, so the service requirements. We can either use your crew or we can use our crew. So it can either be catered or we can use our own workforce to feed our team. And if we're going to use their team, if the agreement is that we're going to use their team, then they're responsible for all the supplies and all the materials, the cambrels, all the stuff and supplies that they're going to bring. They're also responsible for their all personnel as well. Something that I want to point out here is the same kind of entree shall not be served twice on the same day. So for example, if the chicken is served for lunch, it may not be served again for dinner. Another one is that if the same entree is served, let's say chicken was served on Monday for lunch, it shouldn't be served again for Wednesday for lunch. We wanted to have at least 3 days of different food. Every day has to be different. It's not just every single day we're going to pasta for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We want a variety and we want healthy food. Okay. Do we have any pressing questions before I go to the next page? Okie dokie.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get my microphone to
No
stop
problem.
working. This is Mac. I'm just curious. So if we're the supplier will know all of this ahead of time. We will actually have a conversation with them and meeting it while we're going through this information, and he will be aware. She will be aware of what our requirements are for feeding long before they get this whole bundle, or does it all happen at the time when they get the bundle?
We
Meaning
have the
all the forms.
conversation ahead of with them. So usually, let's say, I mean, there are several things that you can do, right? There's the cold calling that you can do it over the phone, or there's the in-person visit. And when you're talking to them, whether it's in person or virtually, you will be telling them this is expectations, this is, what we're expecting, this is, and how we activate, etc. So later on, when we go through the later pages, we'll talk about activations, but they know this ahead of time. It's
So there's no
not that
surprises.
no surprises
Okay, good.
at all.
Okay.
Okay,
All righty. Thank you.
no problem. Let's go to the next one. What they're responsible for, the suppliers, our vendors, they're responsible for properly packaged all those meals to ensure safety, so that we don't need to provide refrigeration or heating if served within 4 hours of delivery. And again, safety is the most important part. Food safety is the most important part. We want to make sure our clients are fed on time. We also want to make sure they're getting quality food and they're getting healthy food. They're responsible for providing all the meals at appropriate temperatures at the time of pickup if we're picking up. One thing that we need to take into consideration is the traffic and the distance. So for those of us in LA, because we're doing this in the region, is that I only live 60 miles from downtown LA headquarters. And sometimes it takes me an hour and a half to drive there. So you would need to take into consideration of, is it easier for us to pick up or should they be delivered? If a vendor is near downtown LA and if the shelter is at downtown LA, maybe it's easier and more convenient to have them deliver instead of we pick up if our location is not near downtown LA. So on our end, we should factor in our time frame for pickup and traffic. If they're doing catering, if they're doing the supplier serving line meals, then they will be providing a means of hand washing, sanitation materials, all those, and they will be responsible for removing food and disposables. It's the same thing as if you're hiring a catering company. If you're hiring a catering company, they will bring all the, the food trays and the thongs and everything for you to heat up and to keep it warm, and they'll bring the trash cans, etc. So if they're doing the service line for themselves. Most oftentimes that we'll see is we're picking up, we're delivering, and we're serving ourselves. So those most of the time is not applicable, but it's also good to know. So let's go to capabilities. Again, ideally, this package is done during the steady state that we don't have disasters. So we know whom to reach out to when we have a disaster happen. We're not scrambling the very, very last minute, 2 o'clock in the morning, and see who we can reach out to. The reason we wanted to know their capacity is we want to know whom we can choose depending on different type of disasters. There are vendors that they have a minimum requirement, whether it's the meals per day to order to be picked up, or a dollar amount to be picked up or delivered, or a length of requirement time frame that you would have to order at least a week from us in order for us to accept your order or to open this purchase order. Or that they might have to say that, you would have to, there's no minimum for you to pick up. However, if you want it to be delivered, you need to spend at least $500 with us, to be delivered, and there's a $30 delivery charge. So those we all need to know ahead of time so we can prepare and we can factor in that into the budget. The maximum capacity. There's a difference that if it's a mom and pop shop that they can only serve 20 meals a day versus if you have a chain restaurant that they can produce 1,000 meals just per meal per time, and they can do it 3 times a day or 4 times a day. So that's good for us to know. And if you have a multi-family shelter that you only have 5 clients, and you probably will choose the one that can only produce 30 meals a day versus choosing the 1,000 meals a day that you want to save that for larger disasters. Advance notice required for delivery or pickup. Most of the vending companies, most of the catering companies, they will tell you that they need a lead time for them to prepare. It can be a day or 2, so it is always good to ask them. And for smaller amount, they usually will be able to tell you that if you give me a heads up like an hour before. I've once placed an order from Subway and Firehouse, and I gave them an hour ahead of time, and they give me 200 or 300. So it is vendor dependent, and you really wanted to let them know ahead of time that how many meals we need and what is your lead time, so that we can also be prepared. Supplies for deliver meals, yes or no? This is capacity. This is not saying that we're going to have them deliver the meal. It's that we want to know whether they can deliver the meal or not. And deliver by the supplies, Red Cross certified location, specific location. And what is the minimum number of meals required for delivery? So I'm going to say 50 that is required. I'm going to say advance notice is 2 days. And the other agreement or the consensus is that if they do accept our purchase order, if they do accept our order form, then they also agree that the meals will be ready the time of the pickup. So that's something that to be considered, and that's something that we need to verify with them. So again, factor in the traffic, the distance, So if you need to serve your meal by 11 o'clock at a shelter in Santa Monica, and the vendor is at downtown LA, and it's a weekday at 9 o'clock in the morning, you might need them to be ready by 9 o'clock so you can make the traffic instead of 11 o'clock. So that's something to keep in mind, and to remember that it's not the meal pickup time, is the delivery time, because delivery time is delivered to the shelter itself versus pickup time, there's a driving distance in between. Dietary preferences, and you'll get that to see that what their capacities are. And when we order food, you can get that information from Sky as well. And if they want kosher, any gluten-free, then there is a certificate, and we would want them to include the certificate with us along with this packet. Okay, I'm going to pause here and see if we have any pressing questions before I go to the next page.
Mac asking a question here.
Sure.
When we were doing this, dealing with, I was working on feeding at the headquarters when we were taking care of it. And sometimes we would order for some of the people in the little tiny shelters, like at the two or three different hotels.
Mhm.
And do we have to sometimes get a separate vendor for each one of the hotels? Because some of the people required halal and some required kosher. And no, but that was the two big problems we had. And it would have been nice to have known ahead of time, I have to say, that who was actually kosher, because we were actually bringing in meals that they said were kosher, and we found out later that they were not kosher. They were good meals and they were everything else, but they weren't kosher. We finally found a kosher deli that was able to do it. So all of this, can you? I guess the question is, doing a lunch meal, let's say, can you have more than one vendor supplying the food at that time?
You can. The general answer is you can, but would I recommend it? I would not recommend it.
Yes, I
However,
agree.
right. So something that, so again, that's why I said steady state preparation and capacity building is important, because then you know what you're going to look for. If you can mute your mic real quick so I don't get that feedback. So then we know what we're looking for. And again, and that's the other reason that we require proof of certification, because again, we don't want someone to say this is kosher and versus when we actually got it, this is not kosher.
Yeah.
But something that I recommend for, smaller non-congregating shelters that, hotel clients that you only have 2 or 3, it is to order from the same vendor, then you can deliver separately. But again, it really depending on the dietary restrictions. If the specific vendor cannot accommodate that dietary restrictions, then of course you're going to search for someone else. But then the better choice will be finding a vendor that can accommodate all the dietary restrictions.
I agree.
So you don't have to go to multiple ones. But it can be difficult, especially when we have an active disaster, especially when the time is crucial, that you don't have the capacity or the capability to go ahead and to, if this is 10 o'clock and you need to serve them, lunch at 11 o'clock, it's impossible for you to shop around for like 100 places and to say, oh, this is going to be the one. So it is really case dependent.
Yeah, sometimes it seemed we were flying by the seat of our pants trying to get the meals delivered in particular and trying to handle that. So I like the idea of having everything set up ahead of time. That's
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. And thank you all so much, everyone, for coming on. I'm currently on my screen, so I'm not able to see how many people we have, but thank you so much. And I'm hoping that after this, we can have more feeding agreements established in our region. Okay, so let's go to equipment and supplies. And again, upon request in a food order, that they can provide the following and to see what they can apply. And again, this is capacity. This is not what we're asking them to apply. To supply. So let's say they can do that. And I'm going to say this charge is going to be $50. Insulated food carrier Canberra's, I'm going to say this is going to be $150. And again, you do not need for them to, as an operation, we don't need them specifically to provide us that, because there are ways that we can get it. We have cameras in our region. We can go ahead and source the insulated food carriers, the liners, etc. We can make the 6409s for it. 6409 is the resource request form. But this one, again, is to know their capacity. And when in the event of disaster that we couldn't get the stuff in time, then they can supply us with that. Use of donated food. So in general, when talking about in-kind donations to a shelter, we do not accept in-kind donations for food, homemade, etc. So this is talking about a vendor that they're donated directly from the original manufacturer. They're donated to the suppliers. And the fresh, they're not expired or past due date, the use-by date, not damaged. They have all the labels, including all the ingredients and whatnot. We might have people with dietary restrictions. We might have people that are allergic to certain ingredients. So have the ingredients label is extremely important on that. There are recipes if we're requesting for it. And again, about the personnel, that if they're helping us to supply, is that they're solely exclusively responsible for their personnel and also for the basic food safeties. We're not going to coach them. We're not responsible for their personnel. It's their responsibility. And again, they will support us and provide us with a proof of food safety certificates. And if we request a nutritional information for each meal, then they also will be able to provide us with that. So here's the activation procedure. When we reach out and requires their services, one of the Red Cross representatives, will contact the supplies representatives and issue a written food order. The part that I want to emphasize is a written food order. It's not verbal, it's written. And what I meant by written, what I suggest is you call them first and say, this is what I want, this is what I want. Tell them, let's say I want 100 meals, start date, end date, whatnot, your dietary restrictions. At the end of the conversation, you send them a follow-up email and say, this is what we need. You want to make sure that you're specific. The day that you want them to start, the day that you want them to end, when you want the food to be ready, whether it's delivery or pickup, what food are you ordering, the amount that you're paying, because again, you want to make sure this is what's being ordered. It's not that, let's say, one person representative, you said they're going to give you $10 per meal, and another person goes, oh, this is going to be 15. So the written food order serves the purpose of verifying and validating what we're ordering at what amount. Another part of this is you want to make sure the person contacting the Red Cross representative contacting that has the authority to contact them and has the authority to place the order. What I meant by that is if you're the admin assistants for the HQ feeding manager and the feeding team, the feeding manager says, well, can you go ahead and place the order? You said, yes, I'll go ahead and place the order. And instead of you placing the order directly as the admin assistant, you're calling one of the shelter service associates saying, hey, can you place an order for that shelter? That's not the proper chain of command. And that person, the sheltering team, the SA does not have the proper authorization to provide and to order the food. And the reason is that when we have large disasters, even when we have smaller disasters, a shelter SA wouldn't know how many food they want to order. Even if they know the population of their current shelter, you might be placing order for multiple shelters. And as Mac mentioned earlier, he was picking up food for other hotels that nearby that you're picking up. So you wanted to make sure that the person's placing the order has the authority. And you would also want to let the suppliers know that, hey, I'm the person that I will be your point of contact. So if anyone else calls you, please make sure that you follow up with me again, just to make sure the correct order is received. There are times that we're going to talk about the reconciliation process later on that we place an order for 100. The invoice that we receive is 10,000. And when we reach out to the suppliers, they will say, well, on this day, so-and-so called me on this. Then you'll be finding out, well, I don't know who so-and-so is. That person does not have the financial authority or the order authority to place that food order. So again, it's extremely important that you document what you're ordering and you're making sure the person ordering it actually has the authority to order food. Again, they're familiar with the contract, our terms, and payment authorization, and we'll talk about that later on as well. And this part is that if they fill any part of the order, and we will understand and take it as they will go ahead and execute the order. So if we place an order for 100 and they already give us 50 of them, we do expect them to continue to give us the 50. Jean, I see your hand up.
How do we confirm whether or not somebody actually has the authority to order food?
We can cover that in the later section. We'll talk about payment and we'll talk about authority.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, before we go to the payment part, do we have any questions on anything that I discussed before that is pressing? Okie doke. Okay, payment, the fun time for payment. Our payment terms are 2%, 15, net 45. We'll give you the description later on. It's basically saying that if we're able to pay to you within 15 days, we'll take 2% off. And if not, we'll pay you within 45 days. All purchases totaling more than 25,000 will be paid by a purchase order. Purchases totaling less than 25,000 will be paid by credit card or direct invoice. We'll go through that later on for the purchase order as well. There are different payment metrics that we'll be talking about later on. Suppliers will be providing invoice and all supporting documents to TCS invoices and at redcross.org. They should also providing that documents to us as well. We should also be CC'd. The reason that we should be CC'd as the person placing the order and HQ feeding manager is that you want to know if the invoices matches what you place the order with. And it's exactly earlier I said you want to make sure the number match that you order. Let's say if you ordered 100, you don't want to receive an invoice for 1,000. Okay, so the food order will not be valid for longer than 30 days, except if we extend by written notice, by written consent. That can be email form. Nothing has to be this, paper. It can be email. It can be with email consent. All the signatures, the same thing. It can be electronic signature as well. This is the part that we want to let the suppliers know ahead of time when we are talking about this packet. Is that Red Cross, we're responding to natural or man-made disasters, and we're not able to predict the disasters. So using hurricanes are notice events because we get hurricane warnings versus West Coast in the Pacific Division. We get no notice events, meaning that the fires, we don't know when fire is going to happen. We know that we're on elevated watch, but we don't know when the next second is going to be. And we're not able to predict when the fire will be contained. So it is important to let our vendors know, the suppliers know that because the nature of what we do, we really don't know when we'll activate, when we'll need you, and when we'll stop. So it is recommended that they do not place any non-refundable supplies or perishable supplies exceeding 3 days worth of orders. So let's say that the general volume of a restaurant is 500 meals a day, and they have the capacity for 1,000 meals. So Red Cross comes in and says, well, we're going to place order for 1,000 meals. They said, great, we're going to order for a week or 2 weeks. We're going to order 1,000 meals a day, knowing that without Red Cross, they can only serve 500. Then let's say on day 5, fire is contained, evacuations order lifted, and we no longer have clients in the shelter, and they still have another 7 days left, or 9 days left for the 14 days period. Then all those things will be perishable, and we're not able to pay for all those, and they won't be able to pay for any of that either because they're not able to distribute to their customers as well. So extremely important to let them know that they really shouldn't order. If someone can mute, that they shouldn't be ordering more than what we need, or what, for exceeding 3 days of worth of orders. And we also have the right, and we may terminate the food at any time with 3 days of written notice. Another part is good to ask ahead of time. It's how soon or how far in advance would you like us to notify you if we need to cancel the order? It is different with each vendor. Sometimes they'll say, oh, you can just let's say that normally they'll sell 500 and we're only ordering 50 meals out from them. They might say, oh, just let me know like 2 hours ahead so I don't have to cook. But let's say normally they're doing 500 and now we're asking them to do 2,000. They might tell you that you need to let me know 5 days ahead, or that you might need to give me 48-hour notice. So it is, again, good to know ahead of time. Invoicing, we covered that earlier. Invoice schedule, they can either do weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. The one that I usually like to see, or the one that I usually recommend, is weekly. But again, depending on the volume, depending on how many meals you're ordering, and depending on how many vendors you have. If this is a small vendor and you only have one shelter, and the shelter is a long-term shelter, the population is static, then you can do with monthly. However, if you have hurricanes and your number fluctuates, then weekly might be the best idea for that. And also depends on the financial status of the vendor. If they have a lot of reserves in their bank, then they can do monthly, or otherwise they might want to be weekly as well. So it's however our suppliers want. Payment method. If it's exceeding 25,000, we want a purchase order. And again, we'll cover the purchase order later on. And they can either do check. That takes time because check needs to be produced and needs to get mailed to them. And usually a check process is 7 to 10 business days after the check gets paid. Another way is automated clearinghouse. That means a direct deposit, that they gave us their bank information, not us, but the invoicing team. So it can be, once it gets paid, it can directly be deposited into their bank. Some of the things that is the top priorities of a feeding team, the HQ feeding team, the HQ feeding manager, or the master chief. Number one is to be able to feed our clients and our workforce in a timely manner. And what I meant by timely manner is that if lunch is expected between 11 to 1, then they should be fed between 11 to 1. The lunch shouldn't be arriving at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Or that if you receive the activation, if you have a disaster action team call that turned into a shelter for 50 clients, and they've been displaced since 3 p.m., and the fire department didn't call you till 6, or we were not activated till 6 o'clock, and it is expected that you shouldn't be ordering food till like 2 o'clock in the morning. It should be the second that you're receiving the request, whether it's to open a shelter, whether to support on site, that you should start ordering their food. So that's to support our workforce and our clients in a timely manner for food. Two, the second priority is that we want to make sure the invoice that we receive is correct. And how we're going to make sure it's correct is, again, the process of making sure the person is documented, have the written order of what is being ordered, that you're tracking what has been ordered, what is delivered. You're talking to the shelter and I shouldn't say talk to the shelter. You're going to see on the SCIA, the shelter client information application, intake application, to see how many people are fed. And you're also going to see how many was billed to us. That's two, that we want to make sure our donor dollars are used efficiently, and we're not paying something that we didn't order or someone else's order. I mean, things do happen. Sometimes you will see, when they're busy, maybe there's a typo that they added one additional zero. So the benefits and to the importance of double checking the invoice. And three is that we want to make sure our vendor get paid. We really, really want to make sure our vendor get paid, especially those mom and pop shops that they don't have too much reserve. We really, really, really want to make sure that they get paid. And again, it's about the payment terms that we can negotiate. And you can also let the invoicing team know that we really want this to be expedited. So again, it's to feed our workforce for our communities, to make sure the invoice is current and correct, and also to make sure our vendor is getting paid. We do not want them to become bankrupt because Red Cross is spending $25,000 and we didn't pay them. Mac, you have a pressing question?
Yes. Could you go over real quickly again to see if we get activated for a shelter? I didn't catch exactly when we're supposed to order the food. If we know we have a shelter coming up, there's going to be possibly, they may say 50 people. And so do you order the food at the moment then, or do you wait until you know that you're going to actually have 50 people? Because I'm thinking of the times that a shelter's been set up and we were ready for people and no one showed. And that's why I'm wondering, when do we actually place the order for a meal, even if there have to have, the people are moved out of their sleeping area and everything at say 2 o'clock in the morning. What do we do?
That is a really good question. So that requires collaboration with the DAT team, with other functions to see how many people are anticipated to come. I mean, we all know that when we have, when we ask the clients how many people need lodging, everyone raises their hand. And by the time we say, well, because we have 100 people, we're not going to put into hotels, we're going to open a shelter, then they will say, okay, only one person. So again, it's at the initial time of the DAT call, feeding is not activated. Feeding won't be activated until a sheltering is activated. So when you transition to a disaster relief operation is whenever you get the go ahead from your team, from your supervisor. If you are the feeding manager and you have the mass care lead, or you have assistant director of operations, they'll be able to tell you when to order food and how many. And it's worth a conversation of how many do we think will show up and how many said they will show up. And it's not determined at the site that we're doing it. However, the difference is if you're at a DAC call, a disaster action team call, and the disaster action team is requesting us to feed those people as we should, then it should be placed immediately. So the general answer is ask your supervisor that what the request is. If there is an actual ask, is it for us to feed them? Is it for us to give them canteen supplies, as in water and snacks? Or are we anticipating them to go to a shelter later on? But my recommendation would be that if they were displaced starting at 3 p.m., and that was not activated till 7 o'clock, and they had nowhere to go and stay there, then I think the first thing we should is to order food for them. And of course, you have to go through the proper chain of command. It's not just me saying that, okay, I want to order food as a feeding person. It's going through the proper chain of command. And when we get the go ahead to order food, and that's something that the duty officer will start to think about, that should we order food and how can we serve our clients best? Then you can start ordering food. Okie
Thank you.
dokie. Of course. I might lose my voice in just a second, and I might need to get get a sip of water in just a second as well. Pricing changes. So anything can happen, especially when we have inflations and whatnot. So you do want to make sure that, let's say that if this feeding agreement, the packet is, let's say that it was signed July 1st, and now, knock on wood, that we have a disaster on August the 13th. On August the 13th, before you do that, you do want to make sure the quote are still current, as they are still saying this is $10, $15, $20, and $25. So we want to make sure that we know the pricing changes before any food orders are accepted and placed. And they're more than welcome to share any additional information they want for us. Sometimes they'll say, I'm the person that gave me the quote. I'm at the corporate level, but if you actually wanting to place an order, you need to contact another person instead. So those can be here. Okay, before I go to the next one, do we have any pressing questions? Okay, I'm hearing none. Give me 2 seconds to grab a bottle of water. Thank you so much for your patience. Okay, next one. Let's see if we have enough time. 5, 6. Okay, we should. Non-binding disaster feeding supply letter. Again, this is part of the packet. So date, again, it will be today's date. It will be ABC Cafe earlier, their address, their city, their phone number. The intent of this letter is for information planning purposes only. So this letter does not serve as a contract or agreement of when or if or how many that we're going to place the order. And this is just simply so that we understand whom we can contact to activate when we have an operation. And we know and they know how we work as well. Again, this is anticipation to give them expectations that what we will do. Working relationship between ABC Cafe and the American Red Cross, let's just say Los Angeles region. I will say ABC Cafe. Outlined in attached documents. The Red Cross mission is to mitigate suffering by the meeting the urgent needs of our victims. We're seeing internally our clients, and we're letting the community members know or the vendors know we're seeing our communities or victims, because when we see clients, they might not understand what we meant by clients. And again, the emphasis here is that we work in the disaster field, meaning that it's not predictable. So anything that we say, anything can change in the next minute when a disaster arises or when the fire is put out. So we wanted to make sure that they understand that it's not that we don't want to be predictable, is that we're not able to predict the disasters. And again, they may be called upon in the time of the disasters to prepare, provide, load, and possibly transport meals and other feeding related products to help our clients. We're tax exempt. And again, we'll send them our tax exempt letter when we're initiating this agreement, when we're placing the food order, so then we don't have to pay taxes on that. And again, the emphasis is on it does not create a partnership, and this is non-binding. So by signing it, just basically saying that all the information that provided above the form that I just talked about and below, actually more like above because below is guidance, that is accurate, is to the best of their knowledge. Okay, before I go to the next page, any pressing questions?
Can you explain? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead.
Can you explain for those that don't know what non-binding means?
It does not have legal consequences, and it does not have, it's not an agreement. It's more of a letter of intent. It does not have, it doesn't mean that we have to execute this.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I thought I heard another voice.
Yes, this is Mac. What I was curious about, I want to just circle back to something you said earlier. When I've been in shelters and started shelters really during the Wildfire and such, and all of a sudden, Ralph's, who bakes fresh bread and stuff every day, they delivered all of their bread for us. They delivered it all to us. Do we accept that? Do we not accept it? They delivered bread. That's all they did. We had during the fire in the Palisades, not the latest one, the one before that. In the Palisades, Gelson delivered all kinds of pre-prepared food that you would normally buy at their deli. They delivered that to us at the shelter at Pali High. And I'm wondering, should we not accept it? Should we?
So I'm going to give you, because of the time, I'm going to give you the quickest answer. The quickest answer is share this with your supervisor. As a field team or as the HQ team, we do not have the capacity for this level to make the decision of that. It's a broader picture of the budget, of the IKD process, the in-kind donation process. So it's not a one single person decision. It's not a HQ feeding manager's decision. It's not the HQ master's chief's decision. It's a collaborative decision on the leadership level and all the other external relations or logistics, and to see the capacity. It's not a yes and no question. So the quickest answer, it's talk with your supervisor. And if you want, I can call you offline later on to discuss the scope because it involves too much that not be possible to cover in this session.
That's perfectly fine. Please do.
Okie doke. Okay, let's go to the purchase order. One of the biggest change for this season or for this fiscal year is the purchase order. The change is that we used to submit purchase order to logistics team after the approval, after the financial authority approval. Now we send it the purchase order to masscare at redcross.org. So the NHQ masscare team can go ahead and submit the purchase order. That's on Coupa. That is the biggest difference for this fiscal year. So purchase orders were issued by the American Red Cross to obtain goods and services from suppliers. You would have to require to use purchase order if the budget is 25,000 or above, or the one single order is 25,000 or above. We'll cover all the other scenarios later. If we have time, we should. 35 left. Suppliers must be established in the Red Cross procurement system before a PO can be issued. Procurement system is the Coupa system. One thing that is really crucial on this is that the date of the purchase order. So let's say that you're submitting a purchase order of 25,000 and today is August the 13th. You're not able to retroactive the purchase order. The purchase order can only go forward. So now the question becomes, if I don't have a purchase order, how am I supposed to pay for the food if I'm going to order today? If it's the purchase order is not in the system, hasn't been approved yet. Well, depending on the amount that you're able to pay using a P card, purchase card. And what if you say, well, I'm new to the Red Cross. I don't have a purchase card. I don't have a P card. Well, someone on your team should have a P card. Someone on the operation will have a P card. Besides the mass care procurement card, they will have a P card. And another question is, what if my P card only has $1,000 limit on it and the food is 10,000? Well, when you have a disaster operation, relief operation, there's a process, an expedited process that you can request the P card limit increase. But again, all of those require approvals, the financial budget approvals. It's not just that I want to pay you this, I can go ahead and pay. It requires approvals and chain of command. And I strongly asking you to follow the chain of command and ask your supervisors before any financials, anything that you're ordering. Okay, so to be establishing the procurement system, you need their W-9 form. That's the one that we talked about very earlier on the very first page. Their contact information, their payment method, whether they want to do check or clearinghouse for direct deposit. And again, the recommended is direct deposit because they get the money the fastest. Again, the standard payment rates will take 2% discount on the invoice if we can pay within 15 days, and otherwise we'll pay within 45 days of the invoice that was received. And again, I want our team to be mindful of the payment terms, to give the owner or our suppliers ahead of time, knowing that are they okay with the 45 days? Or do they really want the 15 days? Do they have enough reserves in their bank to cover all those costs? We do not want them to go bankrupt. We don't want them to spend 10,000 or $1 million food order and they're not getting paid within 15 days. Another critical piece I often see that resulted that people are not getting paid. One is missing the W-9 form, missing the contact information, or the W-9 form does not match the quote. The one that I said earlier, the W-9 form missing Jane Doe and the company, the the quote form might say ABC Cafe. So you wanted to make sure they actually match, because if they don't match, it won't be accepted into the system. So again, that's something that we want to remind our vendors, because we really want to get them paid. The payment method for PO for invoice. And this is basically, what are we talking about PO? One question that we get, it's at the beginning of an operation, we think that we're only going to use 25,000 meals, but then things escalated. We have more fires, we have more floods. Can I go ahead and increase the purchase order amount? Yes, you can. So you will receive a tracker from NHQ once you submit the purchase order. And after it's submitted, they will send you along with a tracking form. You will know that how much has been approved and how much the invoice you received and how much you spent and how much you have left. So this is a good track for us. A large part of the feeding team on the disaster relief operation, on a national level disaster relief operation, is the tracking piece, that you want to know how much we spent, where's the food, did we feed this person, did we feed the other shelter. So when you see the dollar amount is low on your purchase order and your disaster is still ongoing, you really should increase your purchase order. And again, with the proper approvals for supervisors. Another question we get often is that if I requested 25,000 and the next day fire got contained, we no longer need that. Is that okay? That is totally fine. You can request 25,000 and not using that, but you cannot request 25,000 and spend 30,000 without approval. So it's not two ways. Do we have any questions on that? Okie dokie. So the process is requisition that we submit as the disaster relief operation. You submit to the proper approval. Another thing that I want to talk about, I'm losing my mind on the order of topics. So when in order to get a purchase order, you need the purchase order is required when it's above 25,000. And I shared with you the disaster levels earlier, and I said I want you to pay attention to that. The reason I want to pay attention to that is as you're submitting or as you're approving as the massacre chief, or you're reviewing as the massacre chief or HQ feeding manager, if you're seeing this is a level 2 operation, meaning that the top is 50,000, and you're seeing a purchase order of 25,000 on a purchase order, it raises a flag for you. Does it mean that it cannot possibly happen? No. But it means that you need to do some digging on it. Because if you're spending half of the money, the financial budget, on the feeding alone, on one single feeding purchase orders, that means one, it's possible there's a typo there. Maybe it's 250. Maybe it's not a comma, maybe it's a dot. Two, that maybe your situation, your disaster escalated so quickly, like our 363, the Los Angeles wildfires, that maybe even though it's listed as a level 2, maybe it's already escalating to a level 7 operation. So that's also a possibility. So again, when you see the amount doesn't match or something is off, make sure to double check. Make sure your math is right. Make sure it's not 2 times 5 is equal to 1,000. You want to make sure your math is right on that. So again, everything after that, it does not fall through the headquarters. It falls to the NHQ team and also the NHQ logistic team and the massacre team. So once it's approved by the person that has the financial authority, and again, depending on the level of disaster relief operations, there was one relief operation that I was the massacre chief, that one single day I submitted a purchase order of $1 million. And no one on the job has the financial authority to approve that. So it has to go all the way above to Division National to get approved. So once that is approved, then you'll submit it to massacre@redcross.org for the NHQ team to see and approve. Then they will go ahead and create the purchase order on Coupa. Then the invoice team comes out, they'll do the setup. Then once that is set up and the PO number, that you have the PO number, NHQ team will send the field team the PO number. and they will also let the suppliers know. Then everything after that, whether it's the payment process or whatnot, invoice team will be dealing directly with the suppliers. But again, I want everyone to know that we really want to make sure our vendor gets paid. That means that we're also keeping track of if they've been submitted the invoice, did they submit their invoice? Because sometimes they might be thinking that, oh, I texted to you. I texted you a screenshot. A valid invoice is not a screenshot. I've seen screenshots as in the old register, cash register that you have to punch, not those electronic ones, that they took a screenshot of that. That just has 560 number on it. It does not have the vendor name. It doesn't have any meals that we ordered. Those are not valid invoices and those won't get paid. So it is our responsibility to follow up with the vendor to make sure that they get paid. One of the biggest piece for the HQ feeding team that you will be spending a lot of time talking with our finance department and our invoicing team. Feeding usually will have the biggest cost of a disaster relief operation. Sometimes we're behind financial assistance, but most of the time that it's easy on a relief operation that we're spending $1 million a day on food. So we really wanted to make sure people are fed, our invoices are correct, and vendors are getting paid. Okie dokie. I think we all understand what I want to say that I repeated so many times. Do we have any questions so far before I get to the next one? Hearing none. Okay, so this is a sample form. This I'm not able to fill out. However, if you go to this one, this one is by itself the form that you can fill out. The other one example, this is the actual one. So order number, whichever one order number that is, maybe it's 1, maybe it's 2. Date order form submitted. Let's say this is today's date. Date order starts. You wanted to make sure it's sometimes the date order form submitted is the same as the order start date. You wanted to make sure when do we want the order to start. Again, confirm with your supervisor, confirm with the team to make sure that we're aligned on that. So I'm going to say it's going to be tomorrow. And I'm going to say it's going to be valid till, oops, number of days. What I meant is to put this one here. I'm going to say 30 days. Actually, I'm going to say 90 days. Again, supplier name, ABC Cafe, point of contact, Jane, Joe, phone number, email, address. The disaster relief operation number. You wanted to make sure your DR number is correct. Sometimes maybe we're transposing our numbers and we didn't put that correctly. So you wanted to make sure because this is where the billing is going to go. Once this one attached with the invoice along with the packet and a W-9, that's what the invoice team is going to go based off. Name of the request, representative placing the order. I'm the one, my phone number. I'm not going to type all those and I'm going to put my work location as HQ. Again, this will be really important. You wanted to emphasize what you want, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, number of meals, and price per meal. So I'm going to say I want breakfast, and I want 20, and this is $10. I'm going to say I want lunch. I also want 20, and I'm going to say this is 15. Dinner, 20, 20. Special meals. And again, as Mac mentioned earlier, that we do want to make sure that when they see kosher, they're actually kosher. We don't want to place the order and find out, oh, they actually don't do kosher meals. So again, the special meal request, you can see it from Skya. This will be the same thing as earlier. I am going to go to the very top, very bottom, the next page. The total order cost per meal times the number of meals. Again, we wanted to make sure this is accurate. The most often mistakes that I see is either misplacing the dot versus comma versus adding a zero, misplacing a zero, or not if let's say you're doing 3 meals from the vendor, and sometimes maybe the other vendor you're not doing breakfast, because usually on a disaster relief operation, breakfast is covered by 60 for online by logistics. We don't actually order breakfast, but again, that's DR dependent. So for example, maybe for this particular shelter that you order breakfast, but another one that you didn't. So you wanted to make sure all those numbers adds up correctly. I'm not going to go based on that. I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to say cost per meal is 10 to make it easier. And the number of meals is 20 meals a day. And now you want to know, how many days do you want? Do you want them to feed 7 days? Do you want them to feed 14 days? And again, depending on the disaster, if for hurricanes, it's probably safe to order a week or two. For wildfires, maybe you want to start small, that you don't want to start 7 days or you don't want to start 14 days. So it's really case dependent. And again, refer to your supervisor and the team to ask for guidance of how many meals you should order. I'm going to say that number of meals is 20. Actually, I'm going to do 60 because 20 for lunch, 20 for dinner, 20 for breakfast. That's 60 a day. And I'm going to say we're going to do 7 days. Then you're going to do the final amount, which is 4,200. It is wise for us to have someone else check our math. There are different levels here that the person filling the form will be checking that. The person reviewing the 60 for all nights will be checking that as well, your approver, and again, depending on the financial authorities, whomever is approving that. Once it gets to the national headquarters for masscare@redcross.org, the watch officer will also double check. And again, when submitted to Coupa, they will also double check. So it is always good to have someone to double check the math. It's not because we don't know how to do math. It's not because we don't know how to do calculations or use a calculator. It's because that sometimes the disaster, we're so busy and we really want this urgent need of we want food and we want food now that we forget. The same thing that I did earlier, that I put 20 instead of 60 because I'm only thinking about, 20 because it's lunch, but I'm forgetting that I need 3 meals. I don't only need 1. So that's something for us to remember. The remainders are self-explanatory, delivered by suppliers, whether it's yes or no, pick up by Red Cross, whether it's yes or no. This is the other piece that is important that you need to double check. It's where do you want them to deliver? If it's delivery, where do you want them to deliver, especially if you have multiple shelters? It's very often in hurricanes that you have 20, 30, 50 shelters. You wanted to make sure they're actually delivering to the correct address. And the correct meal is delivered to the same address. It's not just, I supposed to order 20 for the headquarters and 100 for the shelter, and I switch the address. You do want to make sure double check. I mean, you've heard me throughout saying that double check, because again, it's because we want to make sure our clients and workforce are fed. And also we want to make sure our donor dollars are used effectively. We're not just spending money without knowing how much we're spending. Okie dokie, do we have any questions on that before I go to the matrix and 60 for 09, and we should be able to end on time? That was a lot, wasn't it? Did I scare everyone off and everyone is silent now? Sandy, go ahead. Sandy, if you want to come off mute. If you're talking.
Sorry, it took me a moment to find how to unmute.
No problem.
Just a question on that form where you were putting in the location. Is
Yes.
it one form for each separate location, or if you're at HQ and you're ordering meals for this shelter, that shelter, and for HQ, you're putting it all in one order? Because I don't see where you can say how many are delivered to each different physical address.
So what I would recommend is if you're doing pickup, then you can put, I mean, if you're doing pickup, you don't need physical addresses, right? If you're doing delivery and if it's the same vendor, then go ahead and put into the same address. However, most of the time that you will see that the shelters, they're so far apart, it is best for you to do it separately. Because if you're doing this, you would also have to be very specific of how many meals are going to be delivered. So the recommendation is to do separately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to disaster. Okay, I want to ask the team real quick. We have 15 minutes left. In the case that I'm not able to end on time, which I don't like not ending on time, does anyone have any problems for me to going over time? I'm hearing none, so I'm going to assume
Well,
none.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get to the microphone quickly enough. I have a meeting with the Rose Parade disaster.
problem.
Yeah, at
Great.
6:30.
Okay, it'll be recorded. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to end on time. So
That's
this is
fine.
the disaster requisition form 6409. I want to really quick going through that. I don't want to type anything out here. The DR number, DR name. The most important piece on here, there are three important pieces on there. The requester name shouldn't be the same as the approver name. The approver, you wanted to make sure that if they have the financial authority to approve that. Jean asked earlier, how do we determine the financial authority and how do we know if they have the authority to sign this or not? Usually when you have the incident action plan, the IEP, there will be a section that says accounting stream and there will be a section that says financial authority. Usually the job director has the highest authority. On a large operation, the feeding manager might have higher authority than the mass care chief or vice versa, but feeding manager usually has a good chunk of the budget to get approved. And again, if this exceeds all the approved allowed, like the job director, let's say the time that is submitted for $1 million of purchase order, then that has to go to national approval because no one on the job has the authority to approve in a $1 million purchase order. So again, that's where you can find. Who does not have the authority to approve? The HQ feeding team, as in the feeding support assistant managers for feeding, they do not have the authority to approve an order of 25,000. The shelter supervisors, the shelter site managers, the sheltering team, they do not have the authority to approve any of that. So you wanted to make sure that the person that approving has the financial authority. Special instruction. So this is pertaining to purchase order. Under special instruction, you're going to say, please open purchase order for $10 per meal for 60 meals a day for 7 days equals 42,000. And of course, you would go ahead and put down here that quantity, quantity will be the one that you're putting in here. But that's how you do a purchase order. When you would have to fill out all those other information, the requesters at a point of contact, etc. But the most important piece here is please open purchase order for $100, geez, $10 per meal, 60 meals a day, 7 days equals 4,200. And again, as the person submitting it and as the person reviewing it, you really wanted to make sure that this is the proper amount. Actually, this is not the proper amount because for 4,200, you wouldn't even open a purchase order. So let me change that. So now we'll need a purchase order. And for an amount like this, you probably wouldn't need job director's approval because usually on any level of operations, feeding manager or mass care chief might not have approving authority for 42,000. You might need to bump all the way to the job director. So advice is you attach this, you have your 6409, attach it with this whole packet, the supply, oops. You attach with this whole packet You will submit it to your supervisor for approval and copy masscare@redcross.org. So once the person that has the financial authority to approve that, then they will reply to all, then masscare@redcross.org can start working on that. Okay, do we have any questions before I go to the payment metrics? I mean, buying matrix. Okay, again, so again, you'll see that I'm doing a search right now. I'm doing a buying matrix. Another thing that I recommend is because we have policies change so often. Let's see, this is updated August the 1st, right? So before you do anything, you do want to come on OneSource to make sure this is the most up-to-date version and not go based off on any previous disasters that you worked on or any of your saved downloads files. Make sure you're going on OneSource, even if it's that you just did it yesterday. I still would recommend going on OneSource. Something I learned today when I was submitting a promotion packet, I discovered our promotion process and the application has changed, and it was changed last night at 8:15. So it is good that I went on and to find the most up-to-date information. Okie dokie. This one tells us when to submit for what. Let's see. So you have three categories. The main ones that we're using, the Emacs does not apply to us. So you have Coupa, you have P-card, and you have concurrent invoice. Coupa is an online system and is not only used by Red Cross, it's used by other organizations as well. You will use Coupa for large orders. It is the default, but you will use orders for large orders such as purchase order. Purchase orders needs to be established on Coupa. And again, purchase order, you'll submit a purchase order when the amount is more than 25,000. And one thing that we hear is that, well, if the single day, if it's 500, for a shelter, do I still need to submit? Well, that depends on the total cost. If you're expecting to order from the same vendor for, let's say, a month, and you're ordering from multiple shelters, and for the month period, that is going to result to over 25,000, you should open a purchase order. You shouldn't use your P card just because your single meal or single shelter is under the 25,000. Do we have any questions on that before I go to P card? Okie dokie. P card is the one that I mentioned earlier that that is a credit card. It used a function as a credit card. It is tax exempt. We would want to let them know this is tax exempt. You can use anything up to when is disaster related, anything up to 25,000. So it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier, that if your PO hasn't been approved, your purchase order hasn't been approved, but we need to feed folks, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to use your P card. And of course, again, with proper authorizations, financial releases and whatnot, you're going to use your P card. And there are times that purchase order won't, we don't get purchase order on time, or sometimes the vendor just is not okay with the terms that we provide, or that they really need the money because they don't have the reserves. That might be exceptions that they'll increase the amount of P card with everyone's approval, I mean, the command team's approval, to continue to use the P card. This is case by case basis. There are exceptions, but again, the main point for using P card is you do want to make sure that 6409s are attached. It's a single 6409 for one single receipt. And also that you wanted to make sure that you got the proper approval before you're submitting your P card. And the other part is if you have a P card, then there is the reconciliation process on the payment net when you have P card. So it's a lot of process if you use P card. And that's why Coupa is the fastest way, because there's no reconciliation. There's reconciliation, but not as a form of reconciliation the charges. You're reconciling how much you purchased, how much it was ordered, how much you were billed, but you're not reconciling the payment itself. And P card has that, and it's a very long and time consuming process. Next one is concurrent invoice. And we're able to use that when Coupa or P card is not accepted. Basically is that the vendor will submit to us an invoice, and because you're not accepting any of that, we're gonna fill out a reimbursement form. Again, we need their we need their W-9s. Then we submit it to concurrent invoice, and in return, they will receive a check. Okie dokie. Any questions before I do the next steps? I'm trying to share my screen, but I'm having trouble.
Okay. Yeah. The person asked about the due places about the feeding stuff. I was a carrier, and we had one vendor. I was going to the hotel, dropping off food there for the clients and the workers, and then I went to headquarters and dropped their meal off at the same time. That's what I was doing when we had the fires.
Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I want to go through this real quick. We have 6 minutes left. So the next steps for courses, this is the direct screenshot that I took last night. So it is current because we didn't have any training changes. Most of the basic feeding associate courses, they're online. And most of them, they're web-based as well. So you can easily access that. I encourage everyone to take the basic food safety. There's a new course coming out. I mean, not coming out, just came out. That is great, that if you can take a look at it. Feeding supervisor, those are the listed courses. And I'm trying to schedule a kitchen side management simulation sometime in September. I'm still working on instructors. If I do get instructors, I will go ahead and let everyone know so we can have people attend a live in-person kitchen side management simulation. Those are not offered often at all. They're almost never offered, only on national, master institutes. Then there are a few courses on feeding manager. I want to share the 2 specialty tracks. What I didn't include is ERV drivers, the emergency response vehicle drivers. What this one here is the kitchen site management, that if you're really interested in working in a field kitchen, that is Southern Baptist Field Kitchen or Salvation Army Kitchen, that you can go ahead and get this specialty track, or that we call qualifications. And you'll see the training requirements and the deployments on level 5 or higher. And the reason it's level 5 and higher is because those are usually when we bring out field kitchens. For level 2 and whatnot, we generally do not bring field kitchens. And especially for Pacific Division, West Coast, we use feeding vendors instead of field kitchens. So if you do want to get experiences for field kitchens, I suggest that you deploy to the East Coast or to the South for hurricanes, Texas, Florida, etc., to get that field kitchen experience. Another one is the mass care feeding management. The difference between this one and the other one is the other one manages the field kitchen. This one serves in the headquarters to manage the whole feeding team. And again, this is the mass care feeding manager that you would have to have a gap of that. Feeding is almost the most complex activities. Shelter is also complex, but there's a difference in complexities because feeding, there is so much tracking that you have to do and the invoice, and because you're the biggest spenders, that you have lots of meetings with different functions, especially finance. I would say that when I was doing mass care chief, but I was covering for feeding that time, I spent probably 70-80% of my time doing feeding. And all the other time, like 20%, just overseeing other sheltering and DES and SRT and reunification. So it is a big chunk for feeding, and feeding is not easy. Sheltering is not either, but they're not easy. This is my contact information. I think you all know who I am by now. I do a lot of training activities. And we have 3 minutes left. I did not even look at Q&A, and I did not look at chat. If we can all make sure that your name is in the chat so I can give you proper credit for that. Okay, so now we actually 2 minutes left. Does anyone want to come off mute for any questions? I know I covered a lot. I do not expect you to retain all those informations because it is a lot. Any questions? Well, then I hope everyone can join us in the standby when we have a disaster relief. I mean, disaster relief operation. We currently have a disaster relief operation. I'm hoping that you can give us some time to be on the standby team. And I want to take a moment to thank all the team members for being available and supporting our clients last week when we had an active fire. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And I apologize for some of the topics that my brain was not working and functioning. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you need a repeat of any of the information, and again, feel free to reach out as well. And Mac, I will be reaching out to you, but it won't be today. I'm losing my voice pretty badly, so I will talk to everyone on a different time. Thank you all for coming on. I will enter your hours. I will upload it to YouTube, and I will send out the slides as well. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. And I cannot believe we actually are ending on time.
Good job.